Welcome. How are you, Dr. Renee?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a busy time. As you know, I launched this campaign last week. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so I've been pretty busy, but I'm so excited to be here with you. This is like time where I can just sort of be calm and think
Yes.
about fun things and have a wonderful conversation with somebody that I enjoy talking to. So I appreciate
Yes,
you.
I feel the same. Yes, a lot going on in the world. So definitely trying to do my part to make it better. So this, I do always look forward to our conversations and always enjoyable to hear the feedback from our fabulous listeners. So I'm ready for today.
Yay. And today we are doing, as we mentioned in the last episode, we're doing something slightly different because it
Mm-hmm.
is Women's History Month. And we also just celebrated International Women's Day.
Mm-hmm.
We thought it would be fun to celebrate some of our SHEroes.
Yes.
And so we're going to spend some time today talking about people we admire, have looked up to, who have been motivating in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, the listeners out there, will also enjoy learning more about these fabulous women.
Yes. And if you don't know about them, then maybe it can inspire you to learn more about them and then maybe even be someone else's SHEro that you may not even know about.
That's right. I think I would love to learn that I would be somebody's Shiro someday.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so you ready to start celebrating some fabulous women, Dr. Renee?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, so I'm going to start out with one of the women that I admire,
Mm-hmm.
and that woman is Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
I should have guessed that one. Oh, we should also let the audience know we don't know who each other's their two SHEros are. So this is exciting for me as well.
Yeah, it's like we're getting to open presents or
Yeah.
something. So the fabulous RBG. And I just thought I would tell you a little bit about her and why I
Mm-hmm.
connect with her. And, you know, just enlighten, because there were some things as I was looking through some of the reading that I didn't
Mm-hmm.
even know about her. I knew a lot about her, but I found out some new stuff. So I'm excited.
Okay.
So Ruth Bader Ginsburg was born in 1933. She was born into a Jewish lower income neighborhood in Brooklyn, and she was a public school product of New York. Her parents were working class folks. They, like her mother worked in a garment factory.
Mm-hmm.
And so, she grew up with working class parents in a working class neighborhood. She got a public education. She Her father actually sadly died of cancer when she graduated
Mm-hmm.
high school, so he wasn't able to see her on all of her successes as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
But she, was, I think I connect with her because of that sort of background, and I think it's
Mm-hmm.
really fundamental to how people see the world. So you'll see how that
Mm-hmm.
plays out a little bit later. But
Mm-hmm.
then she went into, after high school, went into Cornell University. She was first in class, and then she met and married another law student. Uh, as she, what I admire too about her is that she continued studying.
Mm-hmm.
So she did face a lot of gender barriers and inequalities as she continued through her studies. So she attended Harvard, but at the same time, because she had married her husband, she had a baby. So she
Mm-hmm.
was balancing motherhood with also being a Harvard law student. On top of that, she was only one of 8 or 9, depending on your source, of women in a class of 500.
Oh, wow.
So, she
Yeah.
not only was dealing with motherhood, and I mean, when you're an early, when your child is really young, it's really intense.
Yeah, it is.
So then on top of that, having to be like one of very few women in a class of a bunch of men. And
Yeah.
on top of that, the dean was what chided the women
Mm.
because he thought that they were taking the place of more likely to be successful men. So he
Right.
resented the women for taking up the space.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But
Huh, just not
in
surprised.
not surprising, right? That was, that was sort of the time. This was like in the 50s. So, but just like in her true fashion throughout her life, which is another reason why I admire her, she didn't pay any mind to that hating.
That sounds like you.
She became a member of the Harvard Law Review, and she was pretty successful in her time at Harvard. But then also, like a lot of women, especially in that time in the 50s, her husband got sick. So she actually helped him get better. So she took care of him. She was also juggling motherhood, and she was still a student. So, she was able to juggle a bunch of heavy stuff, And then when he got better, this is also very typical of the 50s, he actually got a position because he was also in law school in New York. And so she actually switched schools so she could follow him.
Oh,
and
okay.
She ended up in Columbia. But she managed to come on top. She graduated first in her class in 1959 from Columbia. So I just every step of the way you see her facing these sort of obstacles and just being like, I'm going to put my mind to it and I'm going to keep going.
I like that.
Me too. So then after graduation, she had a difficult time gaining employment. And this is a quote from her. In the 50s, the traditional law firms were just beginning to turn around on hiring Jews. But to be a woman, a Jew, and a mother to boot, that combination was a bit much. So she had what we call now like intersectionality in terms of her the struggles that she faced. So she was Jewish, she was a mother, she was a woman.
That's true.
Yeah, and this is also like probably I would guess now this is moving into the 60s. But then she did find a position as a law clerk in the U.S. District Court of Southern District of New York for a couple of years. She eventually became the first female tenured professor. She eventually became a female. Sorry. She eventually became the first female tenured professor at Columbia in 1972. And then what I also like about Ruth Bader Ginsburg is that she was a bit of a, I hesitate to say community activist, but she was very involved in different activities. So she served as the director of the Women's Rights Project of the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, which we've talked about before. She then eventually became the general counsel for the ACLU, and she was also on the National Board of Directors. So she spent much of her earlier career working on the ACLU, which is a good organization. And then she also, as a lawyer, argued many cases before the Supreme Court, but she was also fair in her arguing. So she believed that the law should be gender blind. So if something was negatively impacting men, she would argue against that. You know what I mean? So she wasn't like trying to only talk about women's struggles. She was talking about people's struggles.
Right. Okay.
So that was all of her early career. And I mean, most of us know her best as being on the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And so she was appointed to the Supreme Court by Clinton in 1993. But even then, there were concerns about her. I mean, of course, this is now she's entering even a more political area. But they thought that some people thought she couldn't be objective on the Supreme Court since she was involved in social issues. So, they thought that might be something problematic. But she was confirmed in favor, 96 people in favor versus 3 to be in the Supreme Court. So, vast majority favored her for that placement. And then on the Supreme Court, she was definitely a voice in favor of gender equality, workers' rights, and separation of church and state. So, she spent the remaining days of her career. And as you know, she passed away fairly recently, but she was still in the Supreme Court. So, she spent the rest of her career working in that area. She did die September 19th of 2020, and she had served on the Supreme Court for 27 years.
Yeah, that was sad when she passed.
Yeah, I was so bummed because,
Mm-hmm.
her biggest thing was that she didn't want to pass away when Trump was in office
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because she knew he would replace her
Replace,
with
yeah.
a more conservative judge. And she was like one of the most liberal
Mm-hmm.
judges on the Supreme Court. And indeed, he did do that. So,
Yeah. And Kate McKinnon always did a really good imitation of her
yeah.
on SNL.
And we all know her from her beautiful pearl.
Yes, yes.
What do you call those necklaces? The ones
It's
that
just a
come
strand of
like,
pearls.
but they were like, it was the one that is almost like a lapel or
The
a
brooch?
shirt collar,
Oh, that, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember what that is called, but yes, yes, yes. Those are
I
lacy.
actually I have one of those, and so
Oh.
I've only, I mean, because there's not really an opportunity to wear something like that.
Mm-hmm,
But every
mm-hmm.
time I put it on, I think of her and
Yeah,
celebrate her as a
yeah.
pretty badass woman. So, just in sum, I admire her because it seems like she was able to, like I said before, ignore all of the noise and focus on the things that she thought was
Mm-hmm.
important and just. And, she was able to juggle her family life. She was deeply in love with her husband by all accounts. He passed
Mm-hmm.
away earlier than she did. And it seemed like they had a really equal partnership.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, just her being so successful and overcoming all of those gender inequalities and barriers, I find that to just be a wonderful story and a wonderful
Yes, that
woman.
is a good story. Okay, good, good, good. All right. So my first person is drum roll. Okay,
Drum
so
roll, please.
my first SHEro or Lady of Inspiration and Controversy is the Queen of Sheba. And
Ooh.
and the reason why I've always liked and felt a connection with her is because she's definitely highly intelligent, and she was confident, and she was a seeker of more information, and she was also successful as the leader. So I will give a little bit of background history. So the Queen of Sheba, she's a ruler of the kingdom of Saba, also known as Sheba, in southwestern Arabia. And then she's also described in the Bible as the Queen of the East, but some modern scholars believe she came from the kingdom of Aksum in Ethiopia, or the kingdom of Saba in Yemen, or both. And one reason for the confusion is because they're just 25 miles apart from each other. And they also had shared a lot of the economical properties, such as incense and frankincense. A lot of those spices that they also had were shared. So based off the gifts that she presented to King Solomon, they weren't sure exactly where she came from. But if you looked at how she came into being in our history, you'll see that she's considered a prominent figure in mostly every culture or every religious culture and tradition. So obviously in the Bible, she's known. She's also known in Islamic and Jewish traditions. She's in the Ethiopian national epic and as a foundation story. And that story is called Kebra Nagast. I think I'm saying it correctly. And that's the origin story of the Ethiopian royal family. And she's also listed as the Queen of Sheba in Persian traditions. So I thought that was really interesting that she's mentioned in a lot of different places. And according to the biblical account of the reign of King Solomon, she visited his court after hearing about his vast level of intelligence and how she couldn't believe that anyone could be that intelligent. And what I like about that is because it's really interesting to be an intelligent person, as you and I are. And so when you're finding someone else who everyone is going on and on and on about how intelligent they are, there's no question that's too hard, then the attraction to that intelligence I can completely relate with. And so she was definitely in awe and made her determination to go visit him in his court. And she presented him with gold, jewels, and spices. And if we calculated the percentage of that today, it was 120 gold talents, which would be $3.6 billion in our present day. And this was just a gift that she was giving him. So
Oh,
I thought that was really good. And so the kind of this disposable wealth that she had to give as a gift to another king shows that, one, she was wealthy enough to be able to give that kind of wealth away, but also that she truly valued being able to have like-minded connections and experiences, and that she knew ethics and protocols of what you need to do when you are in and amongst royalty. So I like that part about her. So she's also known as a seeker of truth and wisdom, which is what I can connect with. And of course, hearing that King Solomon was a great man, that's why she went to go see him. So that's part of the interesting part of it, but there's also some controversy. So I have, I think, 4 or 5 areas of controversy. So one of the areas of controversy is, did she marry the Solomon? And so one reason why they said that did she marry him is because there were rumors, and it's in the Bible, that she was so impressed with his knowledge that she just swooned and like, oh my goodness. So then she just passed out being so impressed. And then because we know Solomon had many wives and many concubines, he was never at a loss for having another woman to be with. And so by adding those two together, there are rumors and scholarly debates about, were they married? Another question about did she actually marry him is because he was also so impressed with her intelligence and finding her as one of his intellectual equals that he said to her, ask for anything that you want and I will give it to you. And so supposedly because of her attraction to him, she was asking for his hand in marriage, which, as a woman who is that bold and confident, I can appreciate that. But in her confidence, supposedly she was asking him for this. He obviously wanted it. And that was one of the controversies of why they were married. Another theory, another controversy is that supposedly she had hairy legs and there were not hairy leg women in his area. And so he built supposedly a very small glass-like floor so that when she approached his throne, she would have to, one, lift up her dress so that she could walk up the steps. And then from that way, he could see underneath were her legs indeed hairy. So I don't know if they were hairy or not.
Felt a little pervy to me.
And that's what I was thinking. I was like, I hope that's not a true account of Solomon. But if it was, I guess it didn't really matter. And he must have liked it because all these
He's like, well, I never knew it. Hair would do it for me, but cool.
I know. He's like, bring it on, Sheba. So I guess that was attractive to him. And then supposedly they also had a seductive relationship based off of that. And then another controversy was that she was a virgin at the time. And that was because she wanted to maintain her virgin status and also keeping her body physically to herself, because she also did not deem any man worthy of having her sexually. And so supposedly when she met with him, she was impressed. He was deemed worthy of her intelligence and also of her body. And this is what one of the unions came from. But it was because she was supposedly so impressed with him. And then going on to controversy number 3 was that supposedly they were so indeed in love with each other that they had a son. And that this son is known as Malik or Menelik in Ethiopian Christianity, Rehoboam in Islamic tradition, and Nebuchadnezzar in the Jewish tradition. So if they did have a sexual relationship, then there are 3 other accounts of where this Queen of Sheba, Queen of the South, came back from King Solomon pregnant or was pregnant along the way. So that's where that controversy came from. And there was one other controversy about her, and there was this demonizing of the Queen of Sheba. And so over the centuries, Jewish and Muslim writers have transformed the biblical account of the Queen of Sheba from being a clever, politically astute person to actually a demonic force that threatened the boundaries of gender and gender roles. And so instead of seeing her historically portrayed as someone who was strong, she's a woman of color. She was also very intelligent and also very politically powerful. they instead chose to, one, demonize her as this wicked seductress who was trying to overpower not only the king, but also as a symbol of overpowering men and being a demonic inspiration to women to not listen to their husbands. So I was impressed with her because, one, she's being intelligent. Two, I liked how she was confident enough to choose who she wanted to have in her life as a single person, as a significant other. I thought that was really great. But also, I think that it's very telling that just like back then, even now, if there is a woman who is very intelligent or very successful, there is often this political demonizing of her to somehow diminish her accomplishments or diminish her intelligence. And so I thought that she was a great example for that.
Yeah. And you have to wonder, like, some of those things, how much of those things are like twisted through history. Like,
Right.
I can just imagine like your hairy leg story. Like, wonder
Like if that really happened. Yeah.
And if it didn't, how in the world did that become a story? Right.
Right.
Funny.
And I think that, there's a lot of history throughout the world as far as Black women or dark-skinned women being either temptresses or something that's some type of unique sexual novelty. And so if it were the case, then that is just a continuation of minimizing the beauty and intelligence of women and the beauty and intelligence of Black and brown women as well.
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
And I've when you were looking through some of the records of her, do they show her as a Black woman? Like what?
Yeah, so there's a lot of places that show that she, Elizabeth Taylor, of course, portrayed her, and she's obviously not white, but very pretty. But they would have some pictures of her being kind of like my complexion, like a caramel complexion, or a very, very dark complexion based off of which tradition are you believing? If you're believing that she was more from Ethiopia rather than from a different culture where there might not have been as much sun, so maybe a little bit further south, then depending on where you place that story, then she might be more of a lighter skin, but she was always like a browner complexion. And I think that in the Islamic pictures that I've seen, she was more like a darker complexion of Halle Berry. So it just depends if you know the actress. So it just depends on which tradition are you listening to? Can you recognize, okay, well, how dark will the skin be? But in no instance was she depicted as a white person, unless you were having Roman renditions or Roman painters trying to recreate her image.
Or unless it's modern day.
Or modern day, right? If it's maybe not so much now, because people are kind of like recognizing that, okay, no, she really was Black, but there could be some controversy. And there are also more depictions of her being lighter, if there was more of a Jewish rendition of her like this.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's cool that you went back that far in history to because it's my belief that there are probably way more women that we should know about, historically speaking, that we just don't, because it's not well documented. And she was the Queen of Sheba, was definitely like a very well-known figure, as were some of the other queens of that time, like Cleopatra.
Right. And I think I just always liked it because, one, when I was younger, I didn't know about sex or anything, but I always knew that guys always liked me. And then as I got older, I knew that I was sexy, as I still am, by the way. And so I always interpreted it as she seduced King Solomon. And so between her seducing King Solomon and also her being so intelligent, I always liked that she was just a powerful woman who was very smart. And so that's how I came to know more about her. Of course, I was listening to her in Sunday school and church. So, which I guess seems funny to think about in Sunday school, thinking about how seducing.
Well, that's really funny you say that, because I would read the Songs of Solomon during church because it was so racy. It was like,
oh, yes, I forgot to tell you that supposedly in some scholarly debates that she is the woman in the Song of Solomon. And in that, she
Oh,
talks
really?
about her, in that she talks about her black skin and of course her supple breasts, nothing about hairy legs, but but supposedly she is the object in that. She's the female character in that.
That's so cool because,
Yeah.
like I said, that was like, because my dad's a preacher, so
Yes.
you know. But if I would sit there and the you know, both my grandfathers preachers too, so I was in church a lot, and you know, you hear the Bible verses and they're really interesting and all, but I would crack that open to Song of Solomon and read that love story.
Yeah, it's a very hot and steamy biblical
It sure
selection. Yeah, so it's really good. But so that's why I was always attracted to her, and that was why I chose her as one of my SHEroes.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm gonna have to reread Song of Solomon now.
In a whole new way.
Yes, yes. And also, I have a hard time believing that women shave their legs back in the day. I mean,
yeah. So I read that when I was researching this whole hairy leg situation. I also read that because obviously he was the wealthiest king in all of the land now and before, he hired a person who was a depilatory. I can't remember how to pronounce it. Depilatory, when you have the shaving cream. So supposedly he had someone concoct some type of cream to put over her legs to help take the hair off of it.
I think we should do an episode on the history of
like female products,
female hair removal.
I don't,
what do you say, listeners?
You interested? We'll see what the listener. I don't know if they're interested in that, but we'll see if they say. I guess we can look at it. I'm not hairy, so we'll have to look at that.
That's so funny. I am a hairy one.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's move on to my next SHEro. And so this SHEro, I actually had a different person in mind at first, but then I was like, oh my God, I cannot miss this opportunity to talk about this woman because she is just so impressive. So do you remember Shirley Chisholm?
Yes, I do.
Unbought and unbossed is her catchphrase. I just love that phrase. Unbought and unbossed. And so I wanted to talk about her because she is definitely a political person, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, although Ruth Bader Ginsburg was more of a law person. So, but Shirley Chisholm was, I relate to a lot with her, but here are some just like, you know, basic ideas. She was an all-around badass,
which is you.
She was the first African-American woman in Congress. Like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she was born in Brooklyn to immigrant parents who were working class. So she had a factory worker father and a seamstress mother. She attended Brooklyn College, and she was very really good at speaking even when she was in college. So she was a part of like a debate team or something. She won a bunch of debates, and her professors encouraged her to get into politics, but because she was Black and a woman, she just didn't feel like there would be any options for her to do that. She proved herself wrong.
That's right.
And one thing I like about her is she actually started out her career as an educator. So she was a nursery school teacher and then became a director of 2 daycare centers. But she also continued her education, and also like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she attended Columbia and got her master's in early childhood education. So she pursued her education. She started out as an educator, and I can relate to that because that's how I kind of started out. And also, it's just funny, when I was like recording the 2 different people, I saw all these parallels, you know? So like Ruth Bader Ginsburg too, she was also very active. Like, I think you could definitely consider her a more community activist type of person. She was active in the League of Women Voters. She was active in the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. She was in the Urban League, which I'm not too familiar with, but apparently that was like a community group. And she was also involved in the Democratic Party Club in her area in Brooklyn. So she was very involved. And because of all of that involvement, she carried with her those ethos during her political career, which is what I'm going to talk about next.
Okay.
And I tend to really admire politicians who have their sort of start in community-based activities and activism, because I think those kinds of people really get what needs to be said and done when they actually get into political office. So in terms of her political career, she ran for and won a state seat, and she was only the second African American in the New York State Legislature in 1964. So she started out at the state level, and again, groundbreaking, right? Like only the second person, a Black person who was actually elected into there. And this is again in the 60s. 4 years later, she ran for a seat in Congress because there was redistricting that was going on. And that actually, I know, I think it's so funny how all these ideas come together. It basically, because of the redistricting, there was a new district carved out of her neighborhood, and it convinced her enough to run, because it, you know, when you look at seats, you have to look at the winnability of a seat. And so the reason why I'm running for the seat I'm running in right now is because it does lean a little bit Republican, but it's not like, it's still winnable. So you know, it's harder to run in races where you just, you know, may never win. So I still think people should do that. But that did convince her to run, and she did. And so she won with 67% of the vote. So, you know, landmark winning. So she, as a congresswoman, she introduced 50 pieces of legislation. She fought for racial and gender equality. She fought for poor people. And she was also, because this was during the Vietnam War, she was also very outspoken against the war. And interestingly, she was the first and only second woman to ever serve on the House Rules Committee.
Okay.
So she knew how to work it.
Yeah, she did. Yeah.
So in terms of the controversial part, this isn't even that controversial, but, you know, you have to kind of situate yourself in 1972. And then, you know, looking at her career, she did say at the beginning, like, oh, you know, I'm a woman and I'm Black. Like, this isn't, you know, but she, by 1972 was like, screw it, I'm going to run for president. And at the time, this was controversial in the sense that women just didn't do this. I mean, look at today, it's still impossible to elect a woman as a president.
That's true.
I mean, hopefully it's not impossible, but it's been very difficult. So she was the first African American and woman to bid for the president for the Democratic Party nomination, and that was in 1972. But she faced a lot of bullshit. So she was blocked from participating in televised primary debates. But then she took up legal action because, you know, she wasn't going to stand for that. And so she was able to make just one speech during the presidential bid. Her campaign was underfinanced, you know. She faced antagonism from the male-dominated Congressional Black Caucus. So she didn't have a lot of like internal support to sort of boost her and lift her up and celebrate the fact that she was running for president. But still, despite all of those difficulties, she inspired students and women and minorities who followed her on what she called the Chisholm Trail. She was able to enter 12 primaries, and she got 152 of the delegates' vote, so 10% of the total. And considering her low fundraising efforts and all of the antagonism that she faced, that's pretty darn good.
That is, yeah, very good.
And of course, you know, after she was not successful, she did not win the presidency, or the primary, I guess. But then, of course, and this is how things go. In 1976, when she was running for her congressional seat, she was primaried by a longtime political rival who was a New York City councilman, Samuel Wright. So she faced a very difficult challenge in 1976, and he like used her presidential bid as a weapon against her. Like, she's never around. She's, you know, off doing stuff that's not helping the district. I mean, dude, she was running for
Yeah, she was
president.
doing, yeah.
Well, the good
Typical.
news is she did not lose that race. She won
Good.
hard hand, like 51% of the vote.
Mm-hmm.
So she stayed in her seat.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had a couple of really nice quotes from her that I think are really inspiring. So, of her legacy, she said, "I want to be remembered as a woman who dared to be a catalyst of change."
I like that.
And then, and then I really relate to this quote. So, she told the New York Times, "I am the people's politician. If the day should ever come when the people can't save me, I'll know I'm finished. That's when I'll
Mm.
go back to being a professional educator." I love that. I got like goosebumps on
Yeah.
my arms because
Yeah.
I might have to borrow that from her as I move
Yes,
along
I
again.
like that. You should. I like that.
So that was my second person. I just
Okay, exciting. Okay, good, good,
yeah.
good. And I looked it up. So the correct pronunciation is depilatory for the hair removal. Make sure I said that correctly.
Pelletory. Okay.
Depilatory. Okay. All right. So my second person is another drum roll, Jessica Alba. And the reason
Oh.
why I relate to her is because of how she is as a female, as a mother, and as a businesswoman. So, to give you a little bit of background, Jessica Alba is a well known actress who shot to stardom with her role on TV's Dark Angel. And she is also known for playing Sue Storm in the Fantastic Four movies. So, she was born in California, and her father is Mexican American. Her mother is both Danish and French. So, her breakthrough role was Dark Angel. And this is where she premiered in the fall of 2000. She played Max Guevara, who is a genetically modified young woman who has escaped from a genetics research lab that does testing on children as subjects. And so I guess that's her thing, because then she went to the Fantastic Four too. so so if you're looking at it from a psychological standpoint, then when we had to learn about doing case studies, you would kind of look at what people are attracted to. So even if we use this podcast episode as like a case study of who you and I are as individuals, I think it's interesting, and also, I guess, not surprising that you chose people who embrace the parts of you that you either are or aspire to enhance, as well as me doing the same thing. And so I guess with
Interesting.
Jessica Alba, we'll see that, yes, she was an actress, but what she drove was some type of transformation over what was her body and how that was being changed. And so I'll get into that in a few minutes. So, in addition to her being on the Dark Angel, she was doing another movie called Honey, which is a hip hop dancer and choreography movie that she did. And then she played a different type of dancer in the movie Sin City, in which she was a stripper, but she was also very smart. Around this time, then they had the comic books heroine Fantastic Four in 2005. And then she did the sequel in 2007 for The Rise of the Silver Surfer. So, what I appreciate about her, one, is that, like Jessica, I also was a theater major, and that was one of my degrees from my undergraduate. I wanted to be an actress and on stage as well, but we'll see. But a lot of controversy. So, controversy number one came for, well, if you're at the top of your game and you are listed as one of the most beautiful women, then why are you quitting? So what she is saying in most of the more recent interviews is that she quit because she was now a mother in 2008 and she wanted to focus more on her health instead of her acting career. So as a bit of background information, Jessica was born with chronic illnesses as a child. She had chronic allergies and she was hospitalized over 11 times as a child, she said.
Oh, wow.
She also said that as a mother, she saw her own mother and women in her family dying of cancer, and that it wasn't anything genetically related, but they kept dying early because of cancer. So now you can kind of see the whole Fantastic Four attraction, the genetic mutations, and all the movies that she really likes to do. So I thought that was really interesting. Um, she also said that by being a mother and now recognizing that she was in an at-risk category as her family members were, she didn't want to also become that type of mother who then died. So she tried to focus on what she could do that was more authentic. And this I can relate to. She said she didn't care about it anymore in the same way as far as acting, and that she wanted to do something bigger. So I don't know how it was for you, Dr. Olysha, but I'm very type A, ACE, OCD, and working on all of my stuff 1,000 hours a day if I could. But when I became a mother, then I suddenly realized this is the last thing that I want to do. And I want to be home with this baby that I had prayed for so long to have.
Yes.
And so Jessica said similarly that, yes, acting was great. Being at the top of the game was great. But once I had this baby, I realized that my life and my body was built not for diseases, but to have a baby, to be fed off, to live. And that's when she started embracing her body and all that it could be done for her. So one of the controversies leading into that was she felt that she was always being typecast as this sex goddess or a sexy person, and that was getting in the way of her already feeling uncomfortable with her body. And she too, like the Queen of Sheba, was also a virgin until she was like 19 or so, which is a little bit earlier than the Queen of Sheba. But she said it's because she just felt uncomfortable with her body, and that she had been taught that because, when you're Hispanic, you're more of a rounder figure. And so when she was being cast for the movies, she was always criticized for her ethnicity and also for her body. So one controversy was, okay, well, they would say I'm not Hispanic enough to be a sexy Latino, and I'm also not white enough to be the smart white girl. So it was always very hard to cast her into different movies. And then she also said that she was always feeling very conscious about her body, and that she would be criticized about, well, make your body do this or make your body do that. And so the last movie of the Fantastic Four, it was during this film when she realized that she really wanted to stop acting, because this is when the director, Tim Story, said, can you just be prettier when you cry? And she felt like, how can I be prettier when I'm crying? I'm just showing you my emotions. But that just tipped off a bunch of other feelings of insecurity and discomfort that she had with her body, and just being her true self, and just wanting this body that she has to just be healthier and to just work for whatever it was that people are asking and expecting of her to do. And then, of course, on top of being a mom, she realized, you know what? Now that I'm being a mom and I'm breastfeeding, this is something I realized my body is beautiful. And now I feel like not only my body is beautiful and can do beautiful things, but also so can my life, which can do more than acting. And that's how I felt when I was in my undergraduate. I was doing a double major, accounting and theater. And I was like, okay, well, I really like doing all of this, but I need to just do more than just making plays or making the box office, messaging for these different plays. And the same thing happened when I became older. When I became a mom, I realized I wanted to do more with my life to make this world a better place, not only for my son, but for other people. So I can completely relate to Jessica in that instance. Another instance of number 3 for controversy is that she is a big, natural person and chemical free. And so she believed in breastfeeding, and that she had a lot of controversy from breastfeeding her child, her first daughter, at Target, and that she had a lot of mom shaming and body shaming because of that. And so I don't know if that was connected or not connected to her launching of her line called The Honest Company. But that is another reason of why she is one of my SHEroes. So she went from being in a situation where she was naturally good at, as far as being on camera, being in films and evoking emotions, to then using that fame to then launch and transfer into a career that would do a whole lot of greater good. And so The Honest Company, she launched in 2012, and it specializes in natural and chemical-free baby cleaning products, beauty products, and house cleaning products. So
actually, I use those Honest diapers.
I use the Honest diapers, the Honest wipes, the Honest hand sanitizer, the Honest, pretty much a lot of her line I was using then and still do. So it's chemical free, all natural, and also many different things that they are using also for even the house now. And so in just a matter of 10 years, from just starting a company in 2012 to 10 years later, the company is worth over 1 billion United States dollars, and Alba earns between 15 and 20% of the company. So it was inspiring to me to have her as a SHEro, because just like the Queen of Sheba and just like Jessica Alba, sexiness is something that's not easy for us to get away from. And there was one quote that she said on here. She was like, I kept being cast for being sexy, but I don't know how to stop being sexy. And I was like, that's right. That's how I feel, Jessica. This was her Playboy's 25 Sexiest Celebrities. And she was feeling conflicted between being in the Playboy 25, but also not wanting it to be about her. And I was like, I can understand that struggle, girl. So those are my two people. So I hope that was informative and also inspiring, but also to let hopefully other women or men listening to know that, one, it's okay to be who you are, regardless of other people accept it or make controversies or rumors about it. And then two, recognize that who are you attracted to for your either inspiration, who are you attracted to that you see as brave or courageous. And usually whatever that person is or whatever they are doing are very good indicators about what your purpose in life is and about what your gifts are that are either tapped but not to maximum potential, or they're completely untapped, period, that I would strongly encourage you to explore and explore more deeply.
Yeah, I do think it's really interesting the people we picked and reflecting on our life paths. It's very interesting.
Yeah, there's in psychology, we have a thing called play therapy or sand tray therapy. And sand tray therapy has a bunch of little tiny figurines and dolls and images. It could be anything from a plastic boiled egg to a horse or a school, but think of like little Marvel Lego pictures or images and the little tiny things. And what you do in the sandbox is that you go into this huge room that the therapist already has curated these objects for over years, probably, and you just pick out whatever is of interest to you, whatever naturally is you're drawn to. You pick out these different little images, maybe like 20 or maybe just 10, and you put them inside the tray, the sand tray. And then the sand tray could be as big as a little kiddie plastic pool. And you would then go in, you would maybe arrange them. And then what we would then do as psychologists is recognize that, okay, well, you chose a family of 3, but there's 2 over here and one's on the other side of the pool or the other side of the sand tray, or everything that you picked in here has no face on here, or everything is only animals. And out of the 1,000 objects, you didn't pick any humans. So then we could then make clinical inferences based off of that. And so the same thing as what we're doing here. Hopefully this isn't too much of a nerdy diversion, Olysha. Okay.
I'm glad we did this too.
Yeah. So just like what we're doing here, you still pick whatever you are attracted to, and whatever is some type of unconscious thought or unconscious concern is what you will pick up for the play therapy, as well as who you will be attracted to. So maybe in 10 years from now, we might have completely different SHEroes based off of who we are at this time or who we have evolved to be. Another interesting way of looking at it in a modern technological standpoint is whenever you're scrolling on Instagram or social media that has a lot of different pictures of people doing selfies, whatever you're most intimidated by or most depressed by is because you're seeing in that particular image something that you have not quite figured out for yourself, or that you have your own insecurities for. So if I just got finished eating a whole tub of Ben and Jerry's and I'm swiping on Instagram and I only see flat stomachs everywhere, then I'm already focusing on like, oh no, my stomach is getting fat. So just like think about that. Whenever you're scrolling through social media, whatever theme of images that you repeatedly have an emotional reaction to is reflecting something subconsciously that's giving you information about who you are or where your thinking is at this time.
Yeah, I do. I was just thinking like, okay, who would I have picked, 20 years ago? And like, when I was younger and I was like, traveling the US and doing photography and art and things like that. So yeah, I think that, and by the way, those SHEroes back then are still SHEroes today, but like the
Yes,
fact
they
that I
are.
picked out the ones that I can relate to now, being a mother and trying to work really hard in my job and, working in politics and working in community activism. Like it makes sense that I honed in on those qualities as inspiration,
To
So
just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing and something that you do want for who and how you are right now.
yeah.
Let me see if I had to think of someone earlier. Well, before I wanted to be Donna Summer, so that doesn't really count. Always some type of sexy person on stage. That's my mode of operation.
Well, you're a sexy person on this podcast stage.
That's right. That's right.
Well, I think this has been really fun. I've learned a lot more about you, Dr. Renee, just by hearing about your SHEroes.
Yes, and you too. That was really interesting. And I hope our listeners learn not only more about us, but maybe think about it for yourself. Who are your SHEroes or who are your heroes? And what is it about them that you enjoy, are attracted to, inspired by, or find controversial? And then use that information.
And let us know. You can
yes, let us know.
You can
know how they say, hit us up on social media.
Yeah, hit us up on social media. We also have email address, join provocative conversations podcast at gmail.com. We also have our website, provocativeconversationspodcast.com, where you can also leave a note there. So we encourage you to reach out and share your SHEroes with us, because maybe on our next episode, we can mention some of them from our listeners. And next week, I'm really excited about our next topic. Dr. Renee, do you want to tell everybody what it is?
Yes, we are going to be talking about the psychology behind conspiracy theories. So it was definitely very exciting, entertaining, but still informative. So I'm looking forward to this fun podcast topic next week.
Everybody get out your string and your pins and your push pin wall so we can do our string board together.
Oh, yeah. That's a cute one. I'll do that for the social media posts.
I did have a string board, Dr. Renee.
Well, of course you would.
We'll talk about that another time.
Yes. Well, thank you everyone for listening. And thank you, Dr. Olysha, for being the best co-host ever.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. I've enjoyed this conversation, and thank you so much, Dr. Renee.
We are your provocateurs. I'm Dr. Renee.
And I'm Dr. Olysha.
Be informed, be entertained, be provoked.